All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Free.
Darren's excited.
Darren is excited to be here tonight.
He's ready.
Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm the pastor and executive director here at Free. It's good to be with you all on another Saturday night. This Saturday night is unique. It's different. It's so important. So I wanted to say that to you to say, if you are on Facebook right now, go to the Free page, pull up the service, the live stream, and click the share button, because you never know who needs to be a part of this conversation, talking about mental health, addiction, the fentanyl crisis. Jeff Johnston and his team here from Living Undeterred. You're going to hear from him in just a moment, and you'll hear more about what this project, this initiative is. But so important, this conversation tonight. So glad you're here. If you're new with us, you should know that this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And what we do here is break the silence of addiction, and we create space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. And y'all, on a count of three, what's the one thing we don't do? All four words. 1, 2, 3.
We don't do shame.
They are doing so good.
We do not do shame here. They nailed it.
They nailed it.
We weren't going to shame you if you didn't nail it, but
Ryan
y'all nailed it.
He usually does.
Okay, did I leave out anything that I needed to say that was really important?
I don't think so. You got the big ones covered for sure.
The big ones are covered, but there's some big stuff coming up. Noelle's going to tell you all about it.
It's true.
There's
a lot of new faces in here tonight. So if it's your first night here, welcome, and we're just so glad you're here. Please grab a welcome bag on your way out. There's a little bit about what we do here at Free Spiritual Community, a little bit about what Wagon Coffee does. There's some fresh roasted Wagon Coffee, a bracelet, and just some fun stuff in there. So please grab one. Transition Sober Living has donated Narcan, and so there's also Narcan cases right next door to the welcome bag. So there's instructions on how to use that, but please feel free to grab one. You just never know who's
Now,
life.
Scott Mounts is the founder and leader of Transition. Scott, stand up and give us a wave. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Transition Sober Living. So thank you for that tonight. So those are right next to our welcome bags on your way out, so please grab one. Next Saturday from 2 to 4, we're going to have an AccuDetox before service. So it's a little bit before service. The
What the
cafe
heck
will
is
be open.
AccuDetox?
Let me tell you what.
Tell me about it.
So we had a regeneration day. Elevate Sober Living Homes had their regeneration day a couple weeks ago, and I had never done acupuncture before. And so Holly, who's running this, she puts about 5 needles in your ear, acupuncture.
That sounds awesome.
It was great. So you sit around for about 20 minutes, and then she takes them out. And I cannot tell you just the stress and the pressure that I had released from that. I was just not a believer before, and now I am a believer.
You're a believer.
I'm a believer of acupuncture now. It was a good time.
works.
Yep. So that's next Saturday from 2 to 4 in the cafe right before service. It'll just be a great time.
Awesome.
So, the last thing that we have going on the weekend after, so September 17th from 2 to 5 p.m., we are teaming up with Recovery Elevator. And many of you guys have heard of Recovery Elevator. They have a huge podcast and a really great social media following. So they have donated funds to Free, and we're going to revamp our front entryway into Free. But we need your help. So please come out from 2 to 5. We're going to be doing some landscaping, putting together some patio furniture. There's going to be some lunch. The Free Cafe will also be opened, but it's just going to be a great community day. So Recovery Elevator, we're teaming up with CARE on this too. So it's going to be a great event. And then Paul Churchill, who's the founder of Recovery Elevator, is going to be our storyteller that evening. So it's just going to be a really good event.
It is going to be a great evening.
Yeah, just teaming up with another great recovery resource. It'll be good.
It's going to be great. So I hope you all come to that. September 17th.
It'll be good.
Is that it?
Well, it is, but would you like to show them what we're going to do for September for our
Hold
series?
on, though. We have did you mention the pizza party?
Oh, my goodness. I really messed up.
You can't do that?
I've really messed up. So after service tonight, we have an after-service party. So we will be having pizza in the cafe next door. The cafe will also be open, so if y'all would prefer a salad or a coffee, you can grab one as well. But please stay after tonight and just join a community and let's hang out and grab a slice of pizza. So that's going to be going on after service.
Get to know each other. Say hello to each other. Don't be creepy with one another. All right, is that it, Noelle?
That's it. Now you can tell them about our series in September.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you, Noelle. So, yes, September. Do y'all know that September is Recovery Month, right? So we're going to start a 4-week series next week, and we are calling this one Recovery Myths Busted. Here's a little video for you. Yeah, y'all, this is going to be a fun one. We're going to bust up some recovery myths. So that's going to be all 4 weeks of September, which starts next week. So I hope to see you next week. Okay, now I know that if you're like a regular here, what we do to open our time together is we celebrate together. We lift up the good things in life. And at the end of the service, we do heartaches together. We carry the burdens together. We lift up those burdens, and we believe that God always celebrates with us, and God always hears the cries from the broken. But I need to tell you tonight, because we have a full schedule with Living Undeterred here, we're not going to do the celebrations and heartaches. But I want to say to you, if you are celebrating something in life, don't leave here tonight and hold that in. Let someone know. You can whisper it to them right now. If you're celebrating a sobriety anniversary or a clean date or a new baby in the house or the new job you just got, whatever the new thing is you want to lift up, let someone know. And for those of you, and this is true for you online people too, those of you tuning in on YouTube or Facebook, drop it in the comments. Get vulnerable with one another. People will be responding to you on those comments, so drop them in. If you're carrying a heartache, a burden, something that has you down, we say it every week. You're not created to carry that alone. You suck at carrying these things alone. So don't leave here tonight without connecting with somebody. Connect with someone you don't know or someone you know. Again, if you're online, connect online. That's community. We build this community here. So celebrations and heartaches. Don't leave them inside. Get them out. Are y'all with me? Okay. So I want to introduce to you Jeff Johnston. He's going to be sharing his story with us this evening. We are his last stop. Y'all saw his tour bus outside, right in the front. Living Undeterred Tour bus or RV. What do we call it? An RV? It's an RV. He's been on a 95-day tour all over the country, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. He's with us tonight. We're the last one, so he gets to get on the bus tonight and go back home, maybe get some rest along the way, but he's doing some good work in the world. Jeff's going to share with us what it looks like to live better in the world rather than bitter, what it looks like to go through hard things and live better, to find purpose, find your why. Y'all have heard me talk about this for the last couple of weeks as we have promoted this event, and you know that he lost a son to fentanyl, his wife to alcoholism, and so he's doing a big thing now, sharing with others, spreading a message of hope, and for us to participate in this message together like we do, because that's what communities do, especially this community. So I want you all to help me welcome my friend and brother, Jeff Johnston.
Every 2 minutes, a person dies in the United States from overdose, suicide, or alcoholism. These are our sons and daughters, our moms and dads, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors and coworkers. On October 4th, 2016, it was our son, Seth, who died from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 23. On June 29th, 2021, it was my lovely wife, Prudence, who lost her battle with alcoholism at the age of 46. Seth was like any other kid, athletic, musician, writer, funny. Yet he died in a seedy hotel room in Waterloo, Iowa. This wasn't who he was. Prudence was a great mother, a wonderful wife. Yet she lost her fight with alcoholism due to the grief of losing a child. Some mountains are just too high to climb, unfortunately. 2 lost lives. So unnecessary. Small, seemingly innocent choices can often lead us to massive, destructive consequences. It's obvious we have a problem in this country, a mental health issue of epic proportions. This is happening on every street, in every city, in every state. Yet we still have a choice. We can choose to be a victim, or we can choose to be a victor. Pity, sympathy, we have no time for that. What we do have time for is empathy, compassion, love, and strength. Sharing stories can help build a strong foundation. It can provide us the opportunity to adapt and evolve, to become better, not bitter. Together, we can raise awareness. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can save lives. This is the purpose behind the Living Undeterred Tour. Living undeterred certainly doesn't mean living untested. I am tested every single day, as are you. We don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. Everyone has a story. What's your story? Everyone has a why. What's your why? You find your why, and you'll find your way. Keep living undeterred.
Thank you. How is everybody tonight? My 2 boys, Roman and Ian, say, "Dad, why do you play that video before you go on stage?" Because all I do is sit back there and cry, but it's okay to cry. I cry all day long. I've already cried a number of times today. I have mixed emotions tonight. This is the end of what started off on May 12th from my driveway with my cousin Todd, who's, by the way, my driver. So everyone clap for Todd back here, will you? I was terrified. I was scared, terrified, nervous. And tonight, it's over, the 95-day tour around the United States. I left a certain type of man. I'm coming back a better man. And to end it today in Denver, what a great bow tie to put on this event. This is phenomenal. What Ryan and Tammy have done here is awe-inspiring, and let's thank them as well. So a quick round of applause for them. I also want to thank Ellen Ingram, a friend of mine that was there from the very beginning, the genesis of the Living Undeterred idea, and my friend Jay Millar that came down. I was on his podcast, he was on my podcast, and my good friend Dr. Mitch Harlan back here, who's got a massive podcast here. He's local in Denver, and he's going to be on the panel with me. But so enough with the thanks. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So I'll have the first slide. I don't have my normal clicker, so I'm just going to say next slide. But I have a quote that I think embodies the living undeterred mindset, and its purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. And you got to say that a couple times to really have it resonate. Purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. And for me, it's very personal. And for everybody in this room, your story is very personal to you. It's no better or worse than mine. One error we mistake in this industry, I guess I'll call it, in the mental health space, is grief comparison. You know, maybe you've had, your only grief is putting your cat down. And that's the only loss you have in your life. And I've buried a child and my wife. But to you, that's the most grief you've ever had. So to you, that's important to work through that. So we don't want to compare grief. That's not a healthy way to do this. So that purpose becomes passion when it gets personal makes me think about the fact that we all go through life searching for meaning and purpose. Every single one of you in this room, me included. And for some of us at a very young age, it's given to us either through a traumatic event, like my two boys, Roman and Ian, their older brother died. So their meaning and purpose was defined right there. For me, it came at 52 years old. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and story as I go through here. But think about this quote as I go through. And if you happen to buy a shirt, on the back of it is the quote, "Purpose becomes passion when it gets personal." It's become my marching orders for the rest of my life. Next slide, please. This is my favorite word of all time, if you haven't figured it out. When I was trying to think about what I wanted to do, and this word goes back with me to college, and I liked it as an athlete, as a competitor, somebody I built up an investment company. I'll talk a little bit about my previous life before I got into this area of work. But that word I liked because nobody was using it. Everyone's using mental toughness and strength and resiliency and the things that sell books, but little old undeterred was kind of left out in the backyard. And so I took it and I've used it, and I still occasionally have to spell check it. Yes, I do. But Living Undeterred became this embodiment of what I'm trying to show, not tell people how to live an inspired life in the face of traumatic events. If I sat down with every single one of you in this room, you're going to have a story that's compelling, that involves or requires you to live undeterred. And that's why you're here tonight. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be here tonight. Next slide, please. So this is important because my previous life, I was a financial advisor. I was explaining to Ryan kind of what I did. At age 23, I started at a company right out of college and worked, you know, the stereotypical 100 hours a week, slept in my car, borrowed off my parents, you know, all the stuff you did to build up a business. And by age 50, I had built up a really good, reputable financial planning firm called Premier Investments of Iowa. We had a TV show, we had a radio show, we managed about $700 million, which is larger than a lot of banks. And I pretty much thought I had it all figured out at age 50. I'll put that in a box and I'll come back to that in a minute. Going back to hope and fear is that we used to talk to clients about money. To get them to become a client of our firm, we had to get them to think about changing their behavior. A lot of people have dysfunctional relationships with money. They have poor relationships with money. And so we would use a lot of fear mongering, like, well, if you don't save, you're not going to be able to retire. If you don't do a will, your kids are going to spend the inheritance that you leave them. And as I got into a little bit further in the financial services world, we focused more on hope and inspiration. What you can do with your wealth when you accumulate it. Instead of becoming a financial hoarder, now you can give away, be philanthropic. So teach people about hope and inspiration with money. Well, I got into the mental health space by happenstance, and I thought, well, why can't mental health be the same way? Why do we always have to scare people and stigmatize them and label them? Why can't we hope and inspire them? And that's what Ryan and Tammy are doing here. Hope and inspiration. I mean, I've been around the country. I haven't seen too many places that have a vibe like this place has. So you guys should all give yourself a round of applause. And I have no ulterior motive to say that, and I just met Ryan for the first time today. So we've communicated previously, but I met him face to face. And what a great thing going here today. So I hope to add value to that by the time I'm done tonight. So I want to focus mainly on hope and inspiration, okay? Next slide, please. So one question I get, probably more than any other question, and I get this from a lot of the media people, TV and radio interviews, is they'll say, Jeff, what question are you trying to answer? What's your end game? What's your objective? And I used to fall for that because I call that a trap question, because they're asking me to say something with the intent to probably counter. And that's what the media kind of does, you know. They want to get us in a position where we have to defend ourselves. And I used to fall for that question. And then I realized, you know what, I got to have a better answer. So I came up with this answer. So when someone asks me, hey, Jeff, what question are you trying to answer? What objective do you have in mind? Here's my answer. If what we were doing was working, I wouldn't be in an RV in Denver, Colorado today. Well, I would be in an RV, but at a KOA or fishing or something. If what we were doing was working, I wouldn't be here. The facts of the matter, what we are doing is not working. It's not working. And there is no question today, we are the most connected we've ever been as a human race, bar none. But I would also tell you we are the most disconnected with ourselves as a human race that we've ever been, bar none. So as we navigate through mental health, do we need to be adding more to our lives, or do we need to be subtracting more? Because we're kind of in this mode of humans right now where we want more and more apps, more websites, more this, more that, but we're getting more and more miserable. So there's something there. There's a direct correlation there. I can talk about that in a few minutes. I want to do a quick social experiment with you. And if you trigger easily, don't have to participate, okay? But I already know the answer to what I'm going to ask you, because it's the same everywhere I go. So I want you to raise your hand if you have been, or anybody that you know, been impacted by suicide. Okay. Suicide affects 70% of all Americans today, one way, shape, or another. 70% of all Americans have been touched by suicide. Second question, have you or anyone that you know been impacted by overdose? Raise your hand. Overdose is the #1 killer of Americans today, 18 to 44. Fentanyl, 82% of the deaths are from fentanyl. Third question, have you or anyone that you know been impacted by alcoholism? Raise your hand. Alcohol use during COVID went up 65%. So while we were alone, miserable, sad, and depressed, we were drunk. Yeah, not a good combination. So the sum total of all this is 800 Americans per day. I'll say that again. 800 Americans per day die from overdose, alcohol, and suicide. 800 a day. Now, that's not the statistic I want you to focus on, because that's the statistic the media wants to focus on, because that's called a death statistic. But I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of families that have been destroyed from alcohol, addictions, and drugs, and death hasn't entered their house yet. Millions of families a day. So let's don't get so distracted by the death statistics. As I like to say, let's honor the dead and live for the living. Honor the dead, live for the living. So 800 a day, that's a terrible, terrible number. But there's a lot of families out there that nobody's died, that those families are destroyed. Okay? And those are the ones we can help. We can't help the dead. We can help the ones that are here. So when I go around the RV, certainly my son and my wife is in my heart. But I'm here to help everyone in this room, and that's what Ryan and Tammy are doing. That's what each one of you are doing. I mean, that's what each one of you are doing. Each one of you are an important part of this whole process. Okay? I know I'm fortunate to be able to not have to work and to drive around a country in an RV. Many of you in this room would be doing that if you could, but some of you have to go to work tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's Sunday, maybe not, but I know I'm fortunate from that regard, and I'm not gonna lose focus, and I definitely am gonna take advantage of that, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So my point of that story is this. I'm just checking my phone. We can make sure I don't go way over. My point of my story is this. It's easy for us to think that we're in a canoe by ourselves, paddling uphill against the current of life, fighting against our own problems. But the reality is, by the show of the hands, we're all in a big boat together. We're still fighting against the current of life, but we're all paddling in the same direction. We're all paddling together. We got in this mess together. I will promise you we can get out of it together. Promise you that. Okay? So you're not alone. No matter what thought you have in your head right now, if you consider taking your life half an hour ago, or you will in an hour down the road, or you consider you're going to have a drink and you've been not drinking for 20 years, but today's the day you fall, you're not alone. You're not alone. We're all in a massive boat, all trying to get to the same place, and that's increasing our quality of life and our well-being for us and those around us. Okay? Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about me a little bit. I was very intentional when I designed the tour to not make this a Jeff Johnston narrative. This is a we story, but to get to we, I have to go through me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. That's a picture of Iowa about right now this time of year. Beautiful. Corn, cows. Did I say corn and cows? I mean, I love Iowa. This time of year, you can come home. Farmers have their little stands up. Their corn's just picked half an hour ago. You open it up, you could eat it without even cooking it. It's that good. October 4, 2016, I was 50 years old, happily married, 3 boys. As I said, successful financial advisor, pillar of the community, active in the Rotary, pat myself on the back every day. And then, like life always does, 100% of the time, it throws us a curveball. And at 6:30 in the morning, I'm taking my middle son, Ian, to his district golf tournament. And as I was taking his clubs out of the trunk, 6:30 in the morning, I got a coffee in one hand, my phone in the other. Team's getting ready to play. Coach Columbus is there. I wave at Coach. Good luck today, Coach. So I'm heading back home to pick my wife up to go watch my middle son golf in districts. How many people in here have kids that play youth sports? Isn't it just nervous, right? Expensive. Somebody said expensive. Yeah, golf is not a cheap sport to get your kids into, let me tell you that. But it's exciting, right? You're kind of living through your kids. You want them to do well. They practiced hard. You want the team to win. I was no different that day. I was nervous. I was excited. It was districts. Our team had never made state in school history in golf, and this was kind of the year. And it's 6:30 in the morning, my phone rings. And as a parent, when you get a phone call and you don't have to answer it, but what's on the other line is something horrific. And I knew at 6:30 in the morning to get this call from this person, something very bad was on the other line. But I had to answer it. And I did. And all I remember as I turned my back to Ian is I didn't tell him that I loved him like I always did when he went off to a golf tournament. Because I got in my car and I thought to myself, how in the hell am I going to tell my wife that our son is dead? Because I found out that day, our son Seth was found in a seedy hotel room in Waterloo, Iowa, less than 1 mile from where his little brother was going to golf that day. So as I was heading to the hotel to identify my son and speak with the sheriff, Ian was heading up to the first tee, and his mom and dad, his champions, his heroes weren't there. First time I've ever missed a golf tournament. And he went on the double bogey the last hole, and our team missed state. We never made state in school history, but we missed it by 1 shot. I'm going to put that in a box, and I'll come back to that in a minute and tell you the significance about this whole journey with the fact that this happened. And golf represents about 5 chapters in my book. And if you Google on the internet, just put in Google Ian Johnston, CBS Sports, you'll see a story they did on my son. He raised $40,000 while he was in high school to honor his brother who died of a fentanyl overdose. And CBS Sports came out and did a documentary on him when he was in high school. And Zach Johnson, the Ryder Cup captain, narrated the whole thing. It's about 9 minutes long. But that can show you how something catastrophic can become something beautiful. And that's what the better versus the bitter road is all about. So I knew that when the boys came home from, Roman was 13, Ian was 15, and I knew when they got home, I was going to have to tell them that their older brother was dead. It was by far the hardest conversation I've ever had in my life, and I dreaded the 5 hours before they got home. Sure enough, they came home. My wife's sitting over to the right, and she's just distraught as you can possibly imagine. And Roman and Ian, I set them on the couch, and I said, boys, I have some really bad news, because Ian was devastated, because remember, he missed that putt, and they missed state by one shot. He was devastated. And I said, Ian, I have a lot worse news than golf today. Your brother's dead. And Ian looked up at me and said, Dad, how'd he die? Drugs? Because he knew at 15 that his older brother died of drugs. And Seth's journey of addiction ended on October 4, 2016. And it started when he was 16, when he was prescribed Adderall for attention deficit. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because I have attention deficit, and it's the best damn thing I've ever been given in my life. And for doctors and for people to tell our kids it's a disorder is almost criminal to me. And that's something I'm going to talk about, stigmas and labels, in a minute. And if I offend a doctor, I apologize. My dad's a doctor, so he's heard this speech before. So the boys are on the couch. Ian asked me how'd he die. I said drugs, and Ian told me. And I knew at that moment that the next words out of my mouth were going to frame and dictate the quality of the rest of our life as a family. I had to say something impactful. So as an athlete, I put on this halftime speech in my head. Dude, you're at the goal line. Don't fumble the ball. Don't F this up. You got one chance, man. When you asked your wife to marry you, you knew you were going to have a moment like this, either as a husband or as a dad. Everyone in this room has that moment. This was my moment. And death was served on a platter for me to become a better man, not a bitter man. And that's what I did. So I thought to myself, okay, what am I going to say? Right? Because I didn't rehearse this. I was terrified. So I stood up, cleared my throat, and this becomes a chapter in my book called The Two Roads. And it's really where the better, bitter whole thing came into my mind. I said, boys, we have one of two roads to go down. We have a road of anger, despair, and hatred. We'll become alcoholics and addicts ourselves, or we have a road of inspiration and motivation. This can be the single greatest moment in our lives and those around us. I'm on the second road. I ask you to join me. I don't know where it came from. I don't care where it came from. But that's what I said. It was authentic. It was genuine. It was from the heart. And boy, did my two boys ever live up to that. Neither one of them drink. Neither one of them smoke. They're ambassadors. They're complete role models. They're 21 and 19 right now. You see, I'm the luckiest man in this room. I have two of my three boys still here. And for that, I'm very grateful. And I will not let them down. That's living for the living. I'm honoring Prudence and Seth. Now, that was a heroic speech, right? That's great, but it didn't work out so well. For 14 months, I drank and drank and drank. I was telling Ryan before this, I was a functional alcoholic since 8th grade. I've been drinking since 8th grade. In Solon, that's what you did. In small town Iowa, you got drunk and tipped over cows. That was an exciting Saturday. TP at occasional house and then tip over cows. But we drank and drank and drank and drank. So for 14 months after my big halftime speech, my big rah, good job, Dad, my wife and I sat home and we drank every single day. I was a 5-day-a-week alcoholic, and I became 7 after Seth died. So 14 months into this, I was in Florida. We had a condo down there. My wife and I were up all night drinking. I woke up hungover. I looked in the mirror, and it was time. How many people in this room have had that epiphany moment? And it doesn't matter where, doesn't matter why or how, it just happens. I knew I had to quit drinking. So December 24, 2017, I stopped drinking. It's been the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And this is from an alcoholic since 8th grade. It's been easy for me because when you bury a child, if you can't find something good out of that and make one sacrifice of alcohol, and it's not even a sacrifice because that insinuates I'm missing it. I don't. It's easier for me not to drink than it is to drink. It'd be harder for me to go back to drinking. It's easy to be sober, right? Would you guys agree? Yeah, damn right. So I would like to say that it turned out well for my wife, but it didn't. On June 29, 2021, I buried my wife of 21 years, Prudence, my best friend, She was 46 years old. She weighed 80 pounds when she died. And I'm not by any means being disparaging to her, because bearing a child, until you've been through that, you cannot predict how you're going to react, and some mountains are just too tall to climb. And I'll leave it at that. So I know her and Seth are pushing me every single moment of my life. And that's the way I look at this opportunity I have in front of you today to talk to you about hope and inspiration and better versus bitter road. So that's my story, and that's the fuel to my fire. So the RV may run out of gas, but I can't. We're driving straight home tonight, by the way, 12 and a half hours straight to Iowa. So I got work to do when I get home. I'll sleep eventually. Changing the narrative. What does changing the narrative mean? I get asked that all the time. Jeff, what's changing the narrative? That's a great question. Changing the narrative for me, and Ryan and I were talking about this when I was interviewing him, because he was adamant about changing the narrative as well, about stigmas, right? So I'm going to have you there you go. You're already ahead of me. Great job, Chris. Drug addict, alcoholic, junkie, insane, wino, drug addict, psycho, wino, insane, drunk, crazy, blah, blah, blah. You know, you've heard all these things, right? Stigmas. But here's what we're missing about stigmas, especially with kids. So we're so far concerned about what other people call us and think about us, but when we look in the mirror, the biggest stigma is the self-imposed stigma that we do to ourselves. And so for adolescents, when I talk to kids, is let's don't worry so much about what other people think about you. If you don't have confidence in yourself, it doesn't matter. And if you develop confidence in yourself, it's not going to matter either, because that's your barrier. That's the wall you build up around yourself. So with kids, it's all about self-confidence. It's all about giving them self-esteem. So when someone says something about them on social media, social stigmas aren't going to be that important if we can conquer the self-imposed stigmas first. Would you all agree with that? We do a good enough job beating ourselves up. Kids, that's where we're going to get this thing fixed, is the kids. The next generation coming up behind us. We want to start getting the 800 deaths a day to 500 to 400 to 300 to 0. It's going to come from the people behind us. And that's why as parents, we got to be the best parents and husbands and neighbors and coworkers we can be, because the kids are watching our lead. And if they watch you get drunk every night or do what you're going to do, then we can't expect them to grow up any different than the way we are, right? And that seems logical and common sense, but it's difficult in practice. The next thing is labels I want to talk about. So I said stigmas and labels. I'm going to hit attention deficit really quick, because in my bubble, I don't allow anyone to use the word disorder around me at all for attention deficit. I just don't. When I was young, I had a full-blown attention deficit, and my friends were given Ritalin. And my dad, being a doctor, never gave me anything. He sat me down and said, Jeff, this is a superpower. I was 5 years old. So I'd go to school thinking I had a superpower. Like these, I felt sorry for the kids that weren't hyper, that you know, I felt sorry for the other kids. I was brainwashed, indoctrinated at a young age that attention deficit was a great thing. But what do we do today with our kids? It's a disorder. Here's Adderall. Good luck. You're going to be a werewolf at midnight, eat all your friends unless you take this pill. It's BS. You know, in my book, I have a quote in there that validates exactly what I'm saying. I'm not just an angry dad. I have statistics behind this. Think about this for a minute. In 1990, there were 600,000 kids on prescription stimulants. I'll say that again. In 1990, there were 600,000 American kids on prescription stimulants. Anybody want to guess what the number was 20 years later? 3.7 million. 2 decades. Do you think kids are any different in 2 decades? No, but you know what became different? The diagnosis. This has to stop. This has to stop. I'm not a doctor. I'm a dad from Iowa. I have no clinical background in any of this. Somebody can help me on this. But this has to stop, especially with our kids. And here's what's really ironic twist of this whole thing. Adderall's prescribed to adults more than children today. So where do you think the kids are stealing their Adderall from when mom and dad are drunk on the couch? Yeah. Okay? So that's my big thing with labels is we need to start reframing. I in college, I practiced a lot of Stoic philosophy. Anyone hear of the Stoicism? It's very popular. It's having a renaissance, a resurgence. It's just basically a frame of mind of how you look at life. And I've really practiced reframing in my life, that better versus bitter, victor versus victim. And I had a lady reach out to me on Facebook one time and said, Jeff, I'm battling survivor's guilt. Everybody heard that term? Survivor's guilt. My daughter died, and I think I should have been the one that died. I let her down. I'm having survivor's guilt. What should I do? And I'm like, I'm a dad from Iowa. I don't have any background in this stuff. I can help you open up an IRA. That's not what I said. I said that in my head. I'm not that crude. So I thought for a minute, okay, I'll give her a response. So I sent her a direct message on Facebook, and I said, how about this? For the next week, take the word guilt out and replace it with opportunities. Now you have survivor opportunities. Go kick some ass. Free, no therapist, no meds. But why can't we do that? And she emailed me back a couple weeks later and said, this has been life-changing. Life-changing. Just a simple word exchange. Guilt. Who has the right to tell you of survivor's guilt in the first place? You don't have to believe any of that stuff. Maybe you can reframe your life and now you have survivor's opportunities. I have no guilt with my son and my wife. I tried everything in my power to keep them alive. I have survivor opportunities now. And that's what today's about. That's what the tour is all about. And you can do that too. I'm not anointed anything special. Okay? If this guy can do it, trust me, anybody out there can do this as well. So as we wrap this up, I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. I got maybe 10 minutes left. Johann Hari, in his TED Talk, he's an addiction expert, talked about the opposite of addiction was connection. And I really do like that. And Ryan and I talked a lot about vulnerability and connection. I think those are kind of the two big things that can get us back to a better well-being, better mental health. And that's exactly why you all are here today. Connect and to be vulnerable and to share stories. Let me give you a quick story on vulnerability to kind of prove my point why it's so powerful. It's free, by the way, too. I was in an airplane flying from the West Coast back to Iowa and over Denver, over the Rockies. Occasionally there's turbulence, right? I'm on the aisle with my mask on. It's towards evening. The lights are dimmed, and there's a lady next to me on the aisle, and my cell phone fell out of my pocket when we hit turbulence. She reached up, picked it up, handed it to me. I said, thank you. She said, thank you. I said, my name is Jeff. What's your name? She told me with attention deficit. I forgot immediately. And then she asked the question that I always feel sorry for when people ask me. I actually feel very sorry for people to ask me this question. So, Jeff, what do you do for a living? I'm like, we got 2 hours. This is going to be awesome. And so I get going, with my attention deficit. I get going, well, my son died. My wife died. I wrote a book. I do a podcast. I bought an RV. I'm driving in the United States for 95 days. We're gonna just kick this thing and blah, blah, blah. And as I notice across the aisle with her mask on, her eyes are full of water, just crying under her mask. And I realized very quickly that I said something that touched a nerve. And as I was going like this, she reaches across the aisle and grabs my arm adamantly and says, Jeff, are you okay? Because I'm like, can't stop talking. And I said, yeah, actually, I'm 56. I'm at the best place I've ever been in my life. I work really hard at it, but I'm at the best place I've ever been in my life, ever in my life. And then I realized real quickly that she wasn't asking me that question to get my answer. She was asking me it so I would ask it back to her. I realized that pretty quickly, and I said, oh, let me ask you, how are you doing? And she said, I'm not doing too good. My first husband abused me. My daughter's in jail, and I'm in recovery for 20 months. But see, that's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is what was happening around us on the airplane. The lady in front of her had her computer off and she was leaning back listening to our conversation. The person behind her had her phone off. She was leaning forward. People in front of me and behind me were doing the same thing. And what was happening in that 2 minutes of intimate human conversation, we had engagement of two people, but we had engaging with a community of people. That's vulnerability. So the plane landed. I got to my car, took my luggage out. I sat down. Midnight, Cedar Rapids Airport by myself, put my mirror down, looked at my face, and I started bawling. Absolutely crying. It was one of the most meaningful moments of my life. And the reason I was crying was I thought to myself, I got 95 days of this. You see, I hadn't left my driveway yet. And today's the last day of 95 days around the United States. So vulnerability and connection are two of the main keys to get out of this mental health issue we've dug our hole into as a society. I'm thoroughly convinced of that. So when we're done today and everyone's done talking and you guys are engaging, let's hug, let's cry, let's share stories, let's talk about the loved ones that are no longer here in your life. Let's hear about what your pain and what your suffering is, because I believe wholeheartedly that pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a choice. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a choice. The pain of losing a son, absolutely unavoidable. How I suffer is not. That's a choice. I can choose my suffering. Now, I cry. When I cry hard. I get it over with. It's like going to the gym. I don't look forward to it, but I never leave the gym unhappy. When's the last time you cried and felt worse? Anybody in this room? It's not possible. I don't, but maybe someone does in this room, but I cry, I feel better. I feel better. Okay? I'm going to leave you with this. I have some other slides, but we're kind of running out of time, and I want to leave you with this. I'm going to skip over this living undeterred mindset thing. If you want to just put the slides up real quick, I can go through them in 4 seconds. But the first, someone asked me about if I were to pick 3 pillars of the living undeterred mindset. I think expectations, preparation, and evolution are the 3 keys. Now, expectations have realistic expectations that life can suck. It can be unfair, but it can be beautiful and awesome as well. I think we just live a life of a video game mentality sometimes. Oh, if something goes wrong, I'll just buy another life. It doesn't work that way. Have realistic expectations. You know, one expectation that people can't deal with is death. We're all going to die someday. Yet when it comes in our lives, we act shocked. And it doesn't always happen at a good, convenient time. And it certainly doesn't happen in the right order. I want son, wife, mom, and my dad next. It's not the order you'd expect. Next is preparation. What are you doing each day to prepare yourself for the marathon of life? I meditate, I exercise, I read, I write, I engage with other humans in intimate stories. But the biggest thing is I avoid all toxicity. I don't watch any TV whatsoever. I don't watch the news. I don't follow politics. Anything that's going to get me upset, I don't watch. So every day I'm doing stuff like this every single day. It's hard for me to have a bad day. Okay? So for me, just avoiding toxicity is part of my preparation. And the last one's evolution. I don't mean the evolution a lot of people think about. I mean the evolution of self. It's a chapter in my book. How are you evolving as a human being? My dad used to say when I was young, if you're green, you grow, you're ripe, you rot. Always be learning. You see, I had never driven an RV before. I bought that thing sight unseen. Right? I had to learn how to what? Drive an RV, didn't I? Or I tore the awning off in Arkansas, but that's a whole different story. I did. I left it open, took off, flying down, called my dad. Boom, my son goes, Dad, the awning's out. Ripped it off. Went down the interstate. It blew off like a big parachute. I had an hour and a half to get to a presentation in Little Rock, and guess what? We made it, and it was one of the best presentations because Rotary signed a 5-year deal with me to go around with them and talk about the opioid epidemic. So good things happen sometimes out of bad situations. Here's how I'm going to end this. This is the greatest question I think you can ask yourself. I think this is the greatest question that you can ask yourself, and anyone can ask themselves this question. And how you answer this question will dictate the quality of the rest of your life. I'm convinced it's that big a question. Here it is. Do things happen to you, or do things happen for you? Things happen to you? That's a victim mindset. Woe is me, why not somebody else? You're looking for pity, you're looking for sympathy. I call that the bitter road. If things happen for you, that's a victor mindset. It's empathy, compassion, love, strength, courage, meaning, and purpose. We call that the better road. I said this one time after one of these talks, and a young lady came up. She was pretty distraught, and she said, Jeff, I have to ask you this question. I appreciate how you presented that 2 and 4 thing, but I'm struggling with how you can bury a child and bury your wife, and this can be something for you. Is that a fair question? So I thought, and I said this. I said, it must be for me, because if it's not for me, it's to me, and if it's to me, I'm on the bitter road. You see, I'm on the better road for that reason alone. It must be for me. Purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. Keep living undeterred. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, and Living Undeterred, the whole team. So before we move to our guest storyteller, because we do have a guest storyteller in the house, and we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion after that, and give an opportunity to ask questions. I want to play this song. It's a song called "Leave a Light On" by Tom Walker. And I think it's what we're doing here. I think it's what we're doing here tonight. I hope it's what this community is about, not just now, but into the future. It's leaving a light on. It's being a light in a sometimes dark world. It's finding purpose. It's finding why. And it's doing that so that we can be that for others, so that we can reach out and serve others and love others. So take a moment, reflect on what Jeff talked about, and then we'll have a guest storyteller in the house. Take a moment. If you're new with us this evening, you should know that every single Saturday night we have a guest storyteller join us. Tonight, it's actually like a few guest storytellers, but this is our guest storyteller for tonight to share some of their experience around the topic at hand, what we're talking about on that particular evening. So I want to introduce to you all, some of you know LB Burkhalter. LB, if you can make your way up. And she's got kind of a long title, so that's why I'm looking at my phone. She's the Community Relations Manager at Red Rock Recovery Center, but she's also the owner of Recovered Humans Recovery Homes. And see, you're getting some love tonight, LB. And here's why I invited LB to join us tonight. One, because y'all are just going to love her, but she battled a 10-year fentanyl addiction. She's been clean and sober now for almost 7 years, and she's just doing really incredible work in the world. So I said, can you come tell us about some of that? And she said, sure. So help me welcome LB up to the living room. I said, LB, it's like you're famous or something up in here. Look at all the love you're getting.
I said, but I'm not.
But you kind of are. In our eyes, you're famous. So I just want to jump right into it. First, thank you for being here with us. And I know you were at another speaking engagement this morning dealing with opiates, or what was that on?
Yeah, it was an overdose awareness event in Fort Collins.
All right. So now you get to kind of double up on us. You should be all prepared. So I mentioned to them, battled a 10-year fentanyl addiction, and I know there was other things mixed in that, but I think it's fascinating to know, how were you introduced to fentanyl? Like, what did that look like for you?
So the first time I was introduced to fentanyl was 2005. And I know it's just so recently become such a buzzword, but it entered my life in 2005. And it was coming from people that were prescribed to it from physicians. And then I myself was also prescribed to it.
Yeah. So, and this was 15 years ago, right?
I don't do math, but I mean, you know.
So
y'all know. Don't ask me math.
In relatively speaking, this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you said when we were talking last week, you said it was you felt like you could breathe again when you would take this.
Yeah.
To help people understand that, because, and I wanted to get into some of the details around this, because there are so many questions around what is going on with this crisis. How are people dying? And it's like we're told a grain of salt can kill you, but then you talk to people and they're doing 30 pills a day, and it's like, help us understand some of that.
So obviously fentanyl wasn't my first substance that I dove off on. I mean, I had years of struggles with substance before that. But for me, a life of all of those traumatic events and things that had happened, by the time that I touched fentanyl, it was like, for the first time in a long time, my brain stopped. And I needed that to happen. I always, when I share my story, I call it like the perfect storm, where it was, I just could not handle anymore, and it just kind of broke a little, and then the fentanyl gave me silence. It gave me peace until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah, and you told me you were eating it, injecting it,
wearing them.
Well. So you were wearing a patch, eating it, injecting it,
Mm-hmm.
and this was going on for 10 years.
Yeah.
What did it take from you?
Everything. My children. I was married. I lost my husband. My dignity, my pride, my home, absolutely everything.
So, what was it like when you said, enough's enough? I can't do this anymore. And at the time, I know you were living in your car. You'd lost your home, the kids, the spouse. What was that day like?
I called my dad. It was the night before Thanksgiving. And I called my father, who had always been like my biggest support, also my biggest enabler. And I say that compassionately. And I called my dad begging for just $5. You know, like I just needed $5 to get gas to make it back to Baton Rouge. And he said no, and my dad never said no to me. And he said it's too difficult to love you anymore. And like that was it. And I had like officially reached that place where I was like too exhausted to keep going, but I was also like too tired to even die. I just needed someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah, and speaking of death, you actually did die, right? You were in the ICU. This was right before you were in the ICU.
Yeah, about 3 weeks before that moment, I had an overdose on fentanyl, and I had a blood sugar of 760, and I was in a coma for 3 days.
So I want you to also talk. So that last day, it was you got sober on Thanksgiving Day?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Not many people do that.
Yeah, I get real grateful every year.
Thanksgiving has a new meaning.
Yeah.
So you went to a treatment center, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed there for many, many months.
I went from treatment center to treatment center to treatment center, just door to door.
Staying connected.
Yeah.
And I think it's also to help people understand what were the withdrawals like of fentanyl?
Oh, it was awful. I mean, absolutely terrifying. I had told you I tried to detox myself once, and I nearly died.
Work?
Yeah, it was 17 days of absolute torture.
Yeah, I said, was it like heroin? And you said 100 times worse than heroin.
Yeah.
So you became broken enough to be willing to do a different way. And tell us about what your mom said to you.
My mom's also a doctor. And
Is your mom here?
No, my mom's not here. He said his dad's a doctor, so I'm just relating. Yeah. And my mom's just a brilliant woman, and so I always kind of believe everything she says. And I was on the phone with her, and she said, you know, they've been threatening, like doctors have been telling us to put you in long-term treatment since you were 15 years old. And we always thought we knew what was best for you. And it turns out we don't. We don't know what you need. And she's like, but I do know that if you don't do this, you are going to die. You are going to die. You will die. And it was, my mom had never said that to me in that way before. And it just like, it was just like my dad saying, like, it's too difficult to love you. Like hearing that come out of her mouth, it was like I believed it. Like I knew that this was going to kill me, and like this was it.
So what kept you from going back to it? I mean, obviously a strong pull, something that had been in your life for 10 years. So you believe your mom when she says you're going to die, but what kept you connected to your recovery? What kept you from going right back to the same old way?
Well, my dad physically took my car in the middle of the night while I was in detox.
That helps, doesn't it?
So, I mean, that like really helped. I literally couldn't leave. Smart man. Yeah. Smart man, that guy.
Way to go, Dad. Is he watching tonight?
Way to go, Dad. What?
Is he watching tonight? Your dad?
Oh, no, probably not.
Okay.
But
well, Dad,
maybe
if you do
later.
watch the replay, way to go.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. What kept me connected was making this my entire life. I never stopped volunteering at the treatment center that I just graduated from. All of my closest friends were in recovery. It was watching so many people die. I mean, it's just all the time.
Yeah. And I want you to talk about that now with some of the work you're doing with your recovered homes, your recovered humans, recovery living at Red Rock. And I asked LB to share with us, what are you seeing? I mean, we know what we're seeing here. And I was telling LB the last couple of weeks, I can't tell you, I mean, you all know, when we do heartaches, how many of them are related to fentanyl? That's a relatively new thing for us. But what are you seeing in your feet on the ground work? And I know you don't call it a crisis. I call it a crisis. This is not a crisis. This is a war. And my friends are dying. What are you seeing?
I mean, like, a kid can't even experiment anymore without instantly dying from something. Families are being ravaged like they've never been ravaged before. It's younger and younger, faster and faster. And the stories that I hear, every single day from parents that are calling in trying to find treatment for their kids, or husbands calling in trying to find treatment for their wives, or people trying to rebuild their life out of homelessness for the last 3 years. It's just everywhere I turn, it's there. And it's not just because I surround myself with people in recovery. It's just entering every household in one way or another. So it just became my mission, my purpose, to try and save as many people as humanly possible, to try and change people's perspective on harm reduction, to try and keep people alive long enough to give them the opportunity to find recovery like I did. Because I wouldn't be here today if Narcan didn't exist.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because I know you also do Narcan training. Our boy Scott with Transition Sober Living brought us a bunch of Narcan, as you all heard at the beginning. Can you tell us the importance of Narcan and why everyone needs it?
Yeah, I get real heated about this topic.
Oh, watch out, LB's on it.
You wouldn't withhold insulin from a diabetic that had too much cake at a birthday party. Why wouldn't you have Narcan in every single household, every single business? When it takes first responders 22 minutes to get to an overdose situation, Narcan should have been there to begin with, because it should be everywhere.
Yeah, and I think most people here tonight, most people watching tonight know what Narcan is, but can you just give us like the 2-sentence synopsis of what is Narcan? What does it do?
Mental image for you: heroin, fentanyl, hangs in the receptors in the brain. You blow Narcan up the nose, and it literally physically kicks the opioids out of the receptors that are causing respiratory depression, which leads to overdose. And it kicks in quick. It kicks in fast. You can reuse it. You cannot hurt someone from using it more and more and more. It cannot be abused. A toddler could literally accidentally get into the Narcan and nothing would happen. So why not? Yeah. Why not keep it everywhere? Yeah, totally agree. Can I ask you all to get just vulnerable for 1 minute? If your life has been saved by Narcan, would you raise your hand? We have a few people here, yeah. And I want you all to know, too, if all the Narcans that Scott brought get taken tonight, in these black cabinets just outside these doors, we keep Narcan available. I know there was an evening this week it had to be used in here. It's in those black cabinets. There's some in the cafe. It's in almost every room in this facility. So know that Narcan is available here, and it's easy to use. You don't have to be doctors to use this stuff. So. Okay, so Jeff shared with us a little bit about what's the solution here? What's the answer? Where do we go from here? And the numbers, you just gave me some
started the numbers of overdose fentanyl deaths. It rose 30% this year. It's going up month by month. What do we do?
One thing I like to say is that, like if you think this isn't, this isn't happening to your family or it can't be your kid, think again. Yeah. Because everyone in some way, shape, or form is going to be affected by this. You have to take judgment off the table. No conversation you have to talk about everything. Vulnerable, honest conversation. I even joke and say, like, it should be talked about at the dinner table.
It should, yes.
I talk about it with my 15-year-old son at the dinner table.
Yes. Tammy and I talk about it with our kids. And not just fentanyl, of course, but addiction, recovery, and the struggle, mental health. And of course, we put it in their ways they can understand it, not use big words. But man, we've got to talk about this stuff. I think it's the only, we talk about the stigmas. Here it's breaking the silence of addiction. The only way out is to raise awareness by having honest conversations about it.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing, LB. Do you want to say anything else about what you're doing? That's something you're really excited about right now?
Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot.
I know, I did not have that question in my notes. I just made it up.
We are in the process of opening our second home right now for recovered humans.
That's awesome. So I do want to ask you one last question.
Yes.
Before we move into a little panel discussion here. For someone that is barely hanging on, and we have people every week that will tune in, they'll let us know, people here, they'll let us know. For ones barely hanging on, that are just in the midst of this battle for their life, they're in the midst of this war, what's one thing you would say to them? If you could grab them by the shoulders, what do you say?
I see you. I've been you. And there's a way out.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose?
Thank you, LB. LB is going to stick around tonight if you want to talk more about her. She told me she's an open book. We can ask her any questions you have for her. So she's going to stick around. And I know Jeff is going to stick around for a few minutes. He's also going to get on the road. But I encourage y'all, stick around. Get a piece of pizza. Go to the cafe, get some coffee, and get to know these people and each other. Thank you, LB Burkhalter, for being with us. All right. So, Jeff, I want to invite you back up. And Dr. Mitch Harlan, I want to invite him up. And I'm not going to give Mitch quite the introduction that he deserves because Jeff is going to say more. But Mitch does a podcast. Oh, yeah. He told me, I don't know if it was how recent it was. I assume you'll say a little bit more about it. But it just hit the top 1% of podcasts in the world. All right, man. I hope you say more about it. We got to get.
Do you want me to sit here? Or do you want to mean?
Do you guys want to take the couch?
Okay.
I'll take the chair. Yeah. We need one more mic up in this. One more mic up in this. Who says?
I can hand it to him. We're close to each other.
Okay. Should we just do two? Oh, Tammy was trying to steal the mic.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Mitch.
Yes.
Make sure it's on. Okay. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, just a quick thing. I know we're going to be up against the clock here a little bit. We want to make sure we take advantage of this good friend of mine, Dr. Mitch Harlan. I met him on LinkedIn. He's got, as he humbly said, one of the top 1% podcasts in the whole world. And I was fortunate to be a guest on his show. And I asked him to come down and advocate with us. His show is called Truth Talks, and a lot of his guests have mental health stories. I mean, who doesn't have a mental health story? So I asked him to come down and be a part of the panel discussion here. So Dr. Mitch, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Yeah, I wouldn't have missed this for the world. This is a lot of fun. Love the place. Amazing. Yeah, a little bit about my background. First of all, in this arena, I'd prefer not to be called Dr. Mitch. There's a lot of doctor bashing going on here right now. Kind of made me a little uncomfortable sitting over there for a second. But kind of my tethered story is started out with undergrad, biochemistry, realized really quickly I wasn't going to be a lab rat, just didn't fit my personality. Then I thought, okay, what am I going to do next? So I thought, hey, you know what, as an athlete, chiropractic always made me feel better. I think I'm going to do that. It's holistic. Couldn't get any better. Did that, then thought, you know what, this neurology thing's kind of cool. Maybe I need to do that. So I started studying that. And really along that journey, I found out that, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And had one of the largest practices, seen over 120, 130 patients a day, and started falling in love with people's real pain. And I started saying that, one of the things about pain is we always think it's from a nerve, and sometimes it's not. That's how I got into doing a little bit of the podcasting. We have a 7-book series getting ready to come out. First one you're going to see is called Complicated, Not Impossible. So it really takes on this whole idea behind chemistry and neurology, and we kind of explain people's stories through that. I get stories like Jeff's. That was a write-in story for me from Brian Wall, and addiction became kind of important to me as I was seeing a lot of stories of addiction. And Brian had called and said, hey, I want you to run this story of this guy. So I heard his story, same one you guys just heard, and I was impressed with it. And I thought, man, I'm gonna expose this guy to millions. So that's exactly what we did and why we do it. So the entire podcast is about giving people options of getting out some of the most horrendous things that happen in their life. And then I tell you, I have a hard time being kind of somber a little bit. I'm kind of one of them high energy guys. Like, we have all the people that run out before us clapping hands and fireworks and all kinds of cool stuff, trying to make you drop $1,000 on all of our cassettes and all that cool stuff. But one of the things that's interesting about this journey I've had is I've interviewed over 15,000 people in 27 years. Spent an enormous amount of my own money getting to the point where we're at now, which is fun, which we got some movie deals coming out. We got a whole bunch of really fun stuff getting ready to happen. But there's also a kind of a curse behind it, but it's also a blessing. And kind of the curse is every time I hear a key word, it makes me think of something. Am I taking too long?
No.
Because once I get this thing, it could be all night.
I'll cut you off. Well, so I should let them know. We said we're going till 8:30 tonight. So I do want to leave like a good 5 minutes for questions. But you go ahead. I'll cut you off if I need to.
So one of the things that was kind of interesting is he had mentioned something on an airplane, and in my brain works a little bit differently, I think. And so I was sitting there thinking, oh man, you know what? We need everybody to laugh in here. So I got a really funny story about an airplane. My wife thinks I'm crazy because I read neurology books, right? And it's pretty boring, I'm sure. But we were on an airplane. There was a kid behind us that had Down syndrome. And he started yelling, we're going to crash, we're going to crash, we're going to crash. And my wife looks over and she says, any of that neurology shit you got going on there? She goes, does that mean anything? I go, don't bother me, I'm praying right now. And one of the things that's interesting is there's a curses to knowing a little too much about the brain at times and the way chemistry works. These people do have gifts, and I was hoping that this wasn't one of them.
Yeah. So anything else you want to add to the conversation before we open it for questions?
Just, I love, I was sitting over there and I was actually just super duper excited. I mean, I've had the honor of literally speaking with some of the greatest speakers in the world, rubbing shoulders with some of the most wealthy and powerful people in the world. And I was sitting over on that couch thinking, hearing that story that I just heard, I was like, God, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here. I don't know how to even explain it sometimes, how powerful being in a room like this and stories like this is for me.
Man, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
Jeff, shall we open it for questions?
I think
Hey,
that's
is
perfect.
LB still here? LB in the house? Hey, would you come back up here and be part of these questions? Because people might have questions for you. People hear from me all the time, and it feels a little awkward to just have 3 males up here too, so I think we need the female voice. So would you, I didn't ask you before you did that, but are you willing to take some questions, LB, if people have questions for you? Of course she is. Thank you, LB. So I'll hold this mic and let you all ask some questions. Does anyone have questions for any of our three? Yeah, I'll just stand to the side, Bobby. If you have questions, just come on up here and I'll hand you this mic. Then I'm going to hand LB my mic.
Hi, my name's Ellen. I'm a sister in sobriety. It was great hearing all of you, and I worked with Jeff for 5 months on the tour and had great conversation with Mitch, so I'm so happy to be here. It's awesome. You're free. This is so good. I love it. Anyway, I live in Buena Vista, whatever you want to call it, and there's no kind of Narcan education there. And I would like to go around to all the businesses and educate them. Is there any way we could collaborate on that, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I'd be happy to give you my card and help you figure out the kind of chains to go through. It's pretty easy, and I'd give you my training material and stuff too.
Excellent. Ooh. Who else? Questions? Matt, you want to come up? Actually, no. Let me bring you the mic, dude. I shouldn't ask you to stand up like that.
What, you think I'm old now? What I find phenomenal up there on stage is you have someone that can describe the neurology of addiction, and the guy probably read 100 million books on withdrawals too, what we feel in withdrawals. Alcohol is one of the few that says I can die from withdrawing from alcohol. And I love the beauty of you saying how hard it was to go through withdrawals. By the third week of quitting drinking, I was ready to check myself into an insane asylum. So just to touch on I don't know what was going on here, but it's scary. And the addiction pull is so strong, and I think you conveyed that tonight. Like, to get off of something that's super addicting, I cannot describe to the normal person, but I felt like she understands. It was so difficult. It was like a super magnet. And the neurology, what books would you for some reason, science is important to me. I wanted to know what was happening to me. My brain, the withdrawals, what was, and somehow I found both what I was experiencing plus the science behind it meant something to me. And I don't know if it meant anything to anybody else, but if you can recommend some of the neurology behind or even touch on that a second, that'd be great.
Thank you, Matt.
One of the things when I was writing the book, Complicated Not Impossible, as soon as you have the word doctor or anybody in neurology or chemistry or anything, one of the things that I noticed right away was people want you to explain why they have an addiction. And it's really complicated, hence the title of the book. And so in this book, we hit the 7 values of life, which is first is mentality. You got to understand your mentality. There's intellectual, there's intelligent, there's experienced, and then there's emotional thinkers. Emotional has a ton of chemistry in it. Then you go into another section where a person's talking about their social, who you're hanging out with, what are you watching on social media, how that affects the person. Then we take that down to the next level, which is physical. How you physically portray yourself, whether you're working out, diet, exercise, all of that plays a huge role in your chemistry. Then we take it to the next level, and the next level is family. And family is a support group, right? It's the support of addiction. Then I take it down to the next one, which is the spiritual. And then the last one that I do is I always give people a list of people that are influential in my life. Like one of the people I say will absolutely change your life is Jordan Peterson. If you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, find out who he is. He's one of the most incredible human beings known to man. He's going to piss you off. He's going to make you angry. And it's hard to hear the truth sometimes. So What I did in the book is I took, not specifically for addiction or even the chemistry of addiction, but how the brain operates is what's really important. So when you take that mentality aspect of anything you're having in life, you've got to understand how the brain works. You got to understand how the chemistry works to know who's the most susceptible, know who to help the first or who to help last. The problem is most of the time we don't know that, but we can tell you that it's very predictable of who is most likely to become affected. And it's all done through different steps of each one of those categories.
Thank you, Dr. Mitch. We have time for one more question. Like I said, I think y'all can stick around for a few minutes afterwards, so if you have more questions. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. Okay, I leave here, I get my Narcan, right, I'm out the door. That's like what I can do. What else can I do? Like, what can I do to be helpful? As somebody who's in recovery, as somebody who has a heart for people who are struggling, right? Like, I'd love to know, like, what can I do to be helpful?
Well, I would just say, I was having a conversation, I think, with Chris before we did this about self-care, about how important it is that as we try to help other people, like you alluded to, don't lose sight of taking care of yourself first, especially in cases where you have families, disparaged by addiction and substance abuse. So ironically, as much as you want to help other people, don't do that at your expense. You know what I'm saying? So, I think as advocates, I see every day mental health advocates that either leave the industry or, unfortunately, not every day, but frequently, where they take their own lives because trying to help people all the time is such a burden on them that they end up never helping themselves. And so my suggestion is for any advocate, any mental health warrior out there helping people, do not lose sight of your own mental health, right?
Me, I say be prepared. The moment that a question is what we always say. So another thing I do expert witness and trial. I don't know, I guess I have ADD too. Maybe that's just my superpower, but
Really?
I guess, right? Right, it's weird. Always be prepared. So first of all, listen and be prepared for the answer. In trial, we always say, I'm gonna answer the question that I wanted you to ask me, not the one you did. And so be prepared. If somebody comes to you, know it's a 34-year-old female. It's a very different conversation than a 60-year-old male. They're going through two different chemistries in their life. So be prepared at the time that they ask you for your help. And so somebody might say, well, how do I become prepared? Right? You just listen to all these different genres. So you would listen to his story at his age. There's another, I did a podcast with a guy whose 13-year-old daughter committed suicide. It's one of the hardest ones I ever did, actually. And now I'm prepared for that 13-year-old conversation. So just be prepared.
Get involved. You said you're in recovery, so do something actionable. In Denver, we have the Harm Reduction Action Center. Go volunteer. Hand out Narcan to more people. There's a lot of things that you can do that are action-oriented that won't be draining on your mental health, but you will feel of purpose, and that's what we have to have in recovery, is we have to be of purpose. We have to have reason. So, yeah, come talk to me afterwards, and I'll give you lots of places to go.
All right, can we give one more round of applause for all three people here? Jeff, Dr. Mitch, LB. Thank you all for being here. So grateful for you all. And before we move to the other party next door, let me just, y'all know I say a word about giving each week, and I want you to know tonight we do have 2 giving boxes, and we also have online options that I'll mention in just a minute, but everything that we get tonight, we are giving to Living Undeterred. So everything that you give tonight will go to Living Undeterred so he can continue that mission, help continue it. So like I said, there's a box there if you're the cash or check type of people, and there's one outside of these doors here. And there's also 3 online options for you to do the free app. It's free to download. You can give there. If you do give tonight, be sure to put Living Undeterred in the memo so we can get that to Jeff. You can also do it on the website, freespiritualcommunity.com. You can give that way. Or you can text the number that is coming up on the screen. You can do it that way. Again, put in the memo on all three of these. If you want to give tonight, put in the memo Living Undeterred so we can get it to Living Undeterred. Thank you all so much for being here. I realize we went a bit longer tonight, so some of y'all got to get up and go pee, or you got to get something to drink. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for being patient with your sitting, and thank you all for being here to launch this really important conversation. Thank you for the work Living Undeterred's doing. We're so glad to have you here, Jeff. Would y'all stand with me, please? And if you are the type to opening your hands, it's a sign of openness. It's a sign of openness for spirit to move, for something new to happen in you, to get a bit more serenity in your life. And let's leave here with a big deep breath, being very aware of the pain and suffering in our world, but also the light and the hope in this world. And let's go out with the serenity prayer. If you don't know the serenity prayer, it'll be on your screen. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Grace and peace, everyone. We'll see you just next door.